Imagine a cold winter night in the 16th century. The square of the University of Basel lit by towering flames. A stout young man with a grim expression is throwing expensive medical classics into the fire, volume by volume. The onlookers are terrified, cursing him as a madman, a traitor, and one seduced by the devil. But he simply watches the ashes drift into the night sky, his eyes reflecting a nearly divine calm. His name is Paracelsus. Tonight, let us accompany the flickering firelight and this story you need not struggle to remember, as we step into the true story of his life. He was the most rebellious physician in all of Europe and the first alchemy genius to propose that everything is poison. He was once just a step away from a high position in the medical school, yet at the last moment, he chose to turn his back on all glory. This is a story about wandering, about fire and earth, and about a profound loyalty to nature beneath that mask of extreme wildness. Paracelsus's life was rooted in the damp and deep mines of the Alps. His father was a poor country doctor who taught him not Latin incantations, but the scent of mountain herbs from a young age. While other noble sons were memorizing erroneous classical dogmas in ivory towers, the young Paracelsus was crouching beside miners. He observed how those miners withered due to long-term inhalation of dust and how mercury and lead changed textures under high heat. He realized that nature was not a dead concept locked in books, but a flowing, powerful giant. This intellectual rift made it impossible for him to endure the lifeless teaching methods of the university. He discovered that those self-proclaimed learned professors had never even personally treated a wound, yet were commanding the life and death of patients. Thus, this misfit healer packed his bags and set out on a decades-long trek through the great wilderness. He swore never to read another human book. He was going to read nature, the masterpiece written by God's own hand. Paracelsus's wanderings were an incredibly lonely and dangerous intellectual expedition. He walked from Switzerland to Germany, from Poland across Hungary, reaching even the frontiers of Russia. He stitched up bodies on battlefields and brewed decoctions for farmers in humble village huts. He discovered that true knowledge was not in the bishop's palace, but at the barber's razor, by the blacksmith's forge, and in the whispers of witches. Every night in a foreign land, he would light a simple oil lamp and record the subtle reactions of minerals to diseases. He proposed the epical theory of three primes, sulfur, mercury, and salt, forming the breath and skeleton of the world. This nearly obsessive exploration of the material world gave him a unique composure. Even when expelled for refusing to wear the silken physician's robe, he walked through the cold rain with extreme steadiness. In the storms of nature, he gradually tempered a soul as cold and hard as a diamond. When Paracelsus finally returned to Basel and miraculously cured dignitaries whom even the church was powerless to help, he reached the zenith of his career. However, his temperament, as scorching as a furnace, ensured he could not sit in this vanity for long. From the university podium, he taught openly in German rather than Latin, wanting every blacksmith and farmer to understand the methods of self-rescue. He mocked the quacks in gold-rimmed spectacles who only cited ancient quotes as vultures eating carrion. This extreme arrogance was, in fact, his ultimate defense of the truth. Yet, the hunt of power is silent and lethal. Academic jealousies spread like toxic vines. On that morning of destiny's turning point, he realized all his research could be destroyed by these mediocre people. Thus, he made the choice that would make posterity tremble. He committed the Bible of classical medicine to the flames. That night, watching the curves of the burning parchment, he felt a freedom he had never known. He knew he had finally smashed his chains, becoming history's loneliest and most liberated outlier. In his later years, Paracelsus became increasingly like a hermit walking the edge between the human world and the underworld. In his small cottage in Salzburg, he spent his days with furnaces and flasks. He watched the sound of distilled water dripping, as if listening to the pulse of time. He no longer obsessed over defending his reputation. He began writing the Grosse Wundarznein, the summary of his life's work. He told the world, a doctor's heart must be pure, like a mirror reflecting the remedies God left in nature. In his writings, the most frequent word was no longer conflict, but harmony. This shift in perspective gave his gaze a sense of compassion and stability he had never possessed. He described the suffering of metals, but he was really describing the purification of the human soul. Every dusk, he would walk in the woods behind the mountains, his final way of communing with nature. There he was no longer the roaring trader nor the mad alchemist. He was merely Paracelsus, a speck of dust finally finding its home in the rhythm of growing plants. In the early autumn of 1541, Paracelsus closed his eyes forever in a simple inn in Salzburg. His legacy was meager: a few changes of coarse clothes, a stack of manuscripts no one dared read, and several flasks filled with powder. But he died with extreme quietude, as if merely completing a chemical reaction precise to the second. He answered the question from the prologue: why did he live so arrogantly? Because he discovered that in an era clouded by superstition, only the most burning self-respect could protect the fragile truth. And you now, do you also feel that 500-year-old peace, as solid as the residual warmth of embers? Medieval prejudices have long turned to dust, and those exquisite ancient books have long been re-edited. Only Paracelsus's composure, lighting fires alone in the deep of night, still flickers in the cracks of history. This is a freedom that requires no pleasing of others, a finale belonging to the awakened. Tonight, may you drift to sleep with the starlight from Paracelsus's pen and the stability brought by that extreme self-possession. The world is now quiet, it is time for you to lay down the disturbances of reality. Good night.